The crime the galaxy was alive with light and sound. Massive starships moved between shining planets. Cities floated above clouds. Our markets bustled with thousands of alien species. At the very center of this civilization sat the Valen sovereignty, the rulers of everything. For 5,000 years, they had ruled the galaxy without question. They enslaved who they wanted, destroyed who they wanted, and nobody dared fight back until one day. They made one mistake. They touched the humans in the Grand Senate. Of the Valen capital world, all the powerful leaders gathered. The room was shaped like a great circle, with balconies stacked to the sky, packed with thousands of different aliens. The air buzzed with energy. Trial was about to begin. In the center of the room stood a single human, a man in chains, his face bruised and bloody. His name was Colonel David Kane. He stood tall despite his wounds. The Valen High Chancellor, a tall, golden-skinned creature with burning red eyes, rose from his throne. His voice was deep and cold, echoing through the chamber. "Colonel Kane," he said, "you are accused of defiance against the sovereignty. You and your people have refused our demands. You have killed our soldiers. You have destroyed our ships. What do you say in your defense?" Kane raised his head slowly. The entire Senate went silent, even chained and beaten. His eyes burned with something the galaxy hadn't seen in thousands of years. Something dangerous. Shouldn't have touched. "Earth," he said softly. A few senators laughed nervously. The Chancellor slammed his staff on the floor, and the sound shook the room. "Your defiance ends today," he roared. "I guess your colony is gone. Your species will be erased." Because Kane was smiling, and that smile sent a chill through every creature in the chamber, far above the planet. In the darkness of space, hidden among the stars, humanity was watching. On a silent black ship, Commander Alina Torres stood at the viewport, staring at the glowing Senate building below. Her soldiers, black-armored and armed with weapons no one in the galaxy understood, waited behind her. On every screen aboard the ship, Kane's trial played live. The room was tense. "Is the signal ready?" Torres asked. "Yes, Commander," her officer replied. "We're patched into every channel in the galaxy." She nodded. "For the sentence," she said quietly. "Then we answer." In the Senate, the Chancellor raised his hand to silence the crowd. He spoke loudly, so all the cameras in the galaxy could hear. "For the crime of resisting the sovereignty, humanity is hereby sentenced to extinction. Earth will be destroyed. Your people will be erased from history, and you be the last human to die." The chamber erupted in cheers and applause. Senators pounded their desks, some mocking, some laughing, but Kane didn't look afraid. He just stood there, calm, still smiling. And then the lights went out. At first, it seemed like a power failure. The golden walls of the Senate flickered and died, and the giant holograms above the chamber froze and vanished. The cheering stopped. Then came the sound. A low, sharp tone, like metal scraping against stone, filled the air. It grew louder and louder until everyone had to cover their ears. On the Senate floor, every camera, every screen in the galaxy suddenly lit up again. But this time, they didn't show the Chancellor. They showed a human face. A woman, pale and calm, with black armor and cold eyes. Commander Alina Torres. Her voice was quiet, but it carried across the stars. "You shouldn't have done that." Gasps filled the Senate. Aliens across the galaxy stared at their screens in shock. In the streets, on ships, in homes, millions stopped what they were doing and watched. On the balcony above, a senator whispered, "It's them." The humans? There? Still here? And then the screaming began. From the shadows of the Senate hall, black armored figures appeared, humans moving like ghosts. They struck the guards first, cutting them down before anyone could even react. The senators panicked, stumbling over each other to escape. The Chancellor tried to run, but Kane caught him by the robe, pulling him close. "We warned you," Kane said, his voice low. "Leave Earth alone," the Chancellor stammered. You can't stop us. We rule everything." But Kane just leaned closer, his eyes hard. "Not anymore." Above the planet, hundreds of black human Ships decloaked at once. They didn't fire yet. They didn't have to. Their presence alone was enough. On every world, on every channel, the message appeared. You committed one crime against humans, and now the galaxy will pay. In the Senate, the humans vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving the hall in chaos, leaving the Chancellor trembling. On the balcony, someone whispered, "What have we done?" And far above, Commander Torres turned to her soldiers and spoke 3 words that would echo across the galaxy. Begin the hunt. The galaxy would never forget that day, because it was the day they realized humanity had never been defeated. They had only been waiting, watching, and now they were coming. The galaxy had seen wars before. They had seen rebellions, riots, even entire planets burned to ash. But what was coming now was something no one could even imagine. On the first night after the trial, the galaxy did not sleep. Every screen still played the same human message on repeat. You committed one crime against humans, and now the galaxy will pay. Some laughed nervously, calling it an empty threat. Some panicked and tried to flee to distant corners of space. But everyone felt the same chill in their hearts, because no one could forget the way the lights went out in the Senate. No one could forget the way the humans appeared and disappeared, like shadows, and no one knew where they would strike first. Above the Valen capital world, the black human ships hovered silently, still cloaked to most sensors. The Eclipse, Commander Elena Torres, watched the city below. "Are the targets ready?" she asked. Her officer nodded, his face pale. "Yes, Commander. All 12 primary sites are marked. No civilians." Torres gave a faint smile. "We're not like them." Begin. On the surface, in the heart of the Valen military district, soldiers were celebrating their victory over humanity. Golden banners waved in the streets. Parades marched. Past towering statues of the High Chancellor, crowds cheered as giant screens showed footage of Kane in chains. Then the skies went black. At first they thought it was just a storm, but the clouds didn't move. They just hung there heavy, unnatural, swallowing all light. The golden banners stopped waving as a sudden wind tore through the city, and from above, faintly glowing black pods fell silently toward the ground. When they hit, they didn't explode. They opened, and what came out was worse. Black-armored humans, silent and precise, marched through the streets. Their weapons didn't fire beams or bullets. Instead, they emitted strange, slicing arcs of energy that cut through metal and flesh alike. One soldier raised his weapon at a human, but before he could pull the trigger, the human vanished and reappeared behind him, striking him down in a single motion. The crowds tried to run, but the humans ignored them completely. They moved like ghosts, heading straight for the military command tower. Inside the tower, generals screamed orders. "Deploy all drones! Activate defense grid! Fire!" Everything. But their screens were already dead. Their drones refused to move. And then the walls of the tower cracked as humans breached it from all sides. Above the city, Torres spoke quietly into her comms. "Disable the tower. Do not destroy. Show them what we can do." Her soldiers moved through the command center, cutting wires, smashing systems, and disarming guards with terrifying speed. They left the generals alive, but on their knees. Surrounded by their own disabled weapons, one human planted a black device on the central control console. It blinked once, then every ship in orbit, every weapon on the planet, every satellite shut down at once. The generals stared at the silent screens in disbelief. One of them whispered, "How? How is this possible?" Colonel Kane, now free and unchained, stepped out of the shadows. "We've had centuries to prepare," he said simply. "You've had centuries to forget." All across the capital, human soldiers melted back into the shadows, leaving nothing but silence and fear behind. On the balconies of the Senate building, senators looked up at the black ships hovering above and wondered how many more were hiding. The next day, Torres sent a single message to the galaxy. It played on every channel, every planet, every ship. Her calm face appeared, staring straight into the camera. Her words were simple. "We have disabled the Valen homeworld. Every ship, every gun, every soldier is under our control. We can end them here and now." She paused. But we won't, because this is just the beginning. We are not here for revenge. We are here for justice, and justice takes time. Then the screen went black. On distant worlds, people watched in horror and awe. Smoky bars and crowded markets. Whispers grew louder. The humans are back. On slave planets, workers stood. A little taller. On conquered worlds, rulers trembled in their palaces and in the dark corners of space. Old enemies of the Valens quietly smiled, but the Valens were not ready to give up. In secret, the High Chancellor called his war council together, met in a hidden chamber deep underground. Maps of the galaxy glowed on the walls as generals barked orders and argued. "They're bluffing," one growled. "We still have fleets hidden in other sectors. We can crush them if we strike hard enough," another insisted. The Chancellor slammed his claws on the table. "Do it," he said coldly. "Bring every ship we have. Hunt them down. Burn there." The Valen sovereignty did not sleep. The night sky above their homeworld, once calm and full of glittering stars, was now filled with black human ships. They hovered silently like predators in the dark, waiting. But the Valens believed they still had a chance in secret. Fleets from across the galaxy were being called home. Hidden reserves, thought lost centuries ago, emerged from deep space. Millions of soldiers boarded warships, confident that sheer numbers could crush the humans. The High Chancellor stood before his generals, his red eyes blazing with fury. "We are the rulers of this galaxy," he roared. "We have conquered more than they can dream of. We will destroy them, burn their worlds, wipe them out for good." One general hesitated, but, "Chancellor, their technology, their tactics," the Chancellor slammed his clawed fist on the table. "Enough. Bring me their heads." Order was given, and the Valen fleets began to move. Above the capital planet, the humans watched silently. On the Eclipse, Commander Torres stood at the massive viewport, her arms crossed. The Valen fleet formations lit up her screens, thousands of ships, advancing, forming walls of metal and firepower. Her aide swallowed hard. "That's millions of them. Every ship they've got. All coming here." Torres didn't flinch, simply said, "Good. It saves us the trouble of chasing them." Colonel Kane stood beside her, calm and cold. "Do you want me to give the order?" he asked. Torres shook her head. "No. Let them come closer. Let them think they can win." And outside, the black ships remained still, silent predators among the stars. Hours later, the Valen fleets reached orbit. The sky above the planet glowed with the heat of their engines and weapons. Every gun pointed at the humans. Every soldier in position. Every admiral ready to fire. In the command center of the Valen flagship, Admiral Drex bared his teeth and growled, "Fire everything." And the galaxy burned. For a full minute, the void was alive with light. Thousands of cannons unleashed rivers of plasma. Torpedoes and missiles screamed through space. The entire sky erupted as if the stars themselves had gone to war. When it was over, nothing remained of the black ships, or so they thought, as the smoke and fire cleared. The Valen admirals stared at their screens in disbelief. The black ships were still there, every single one, untouched, not a scratch. One Valen captain stumbled backward, whispering, "That's impossible." On the Eclipse, Torres tilted her head slightly, watching the fleet's confusion. Then she raised her hand. "Begin." The first move was subtle. The Valen flagship's lights flickered and died. Its engines froze, its guns powered. Down, one by one, the rest of the fleet followed. Ships turned on each other, firing blindly. Weapons refused to obey their masters. Engines shut down mid-flight, leaving massive cruisers drifting helplessly, and then the black ships moved. Didn't fire beams or torpedoes? Instead, faint waves of dark energy rippled through space, silent, deadly. Wherever the waves touched, Valen ships cracked apart like glass. Massive carriers shattered into debris. Battleships folded in on themselves like paper, and the humans advanced slowly, methodically, unstoppable. On the Valen flagship, Admiral Drek screamed into his comms, "All ships retreat! Fall back, fall back." But it was too late. The humans began boarding. On dozens of Valen ships, black-armored humans materialized out of thin air. Their weapons cut through walls and armor as if they were nothing. Valen soldiers fought back, but their bullets and blades passed right through the humans. As if they were ghosts, in one corridor, a single human faced 50 Valen soldiers alone. They charged him. He raised one hand, and they all dropped to the ground at once, unconscious. On another ship, a human squad tore through engineering, planting strange black devices that caused the engines to collapse into tiny spheres of nothingness. In the chaos, the High Chancellor watched from his palace, his claws digging into the armrests of his throne. This can't be real," he muttered. "No one has this kind of power. No one." But deep down, he already knew the truth. On the Eclipse, Tora spoke into the open channel, her voice calm, cold, and heard by every creature in the galaxy. "This was your chance to stand down. You chose to fight. You chose to burn. So, we burn with you." And with that, the humans unleashed their full fury. Within minutes, the mighty Valen fleet was gone, reduced to drifting wreckage and fire. The once proud warships became tombs, floating silently in the void. And the galaxy watched. On distant worlds, people stared at their screens in horror as the Valen Empire, the rulers of everything, was shattered in a single night. On Slave, planets' cheers erupted. On neutral worlds, leaders scrambled to hide or flee. On distant outposts, whispers spread like wildfire. The humans, they're unstoppable. On the Eclipse, Kane stood with his arms behind his back, watching the debris fields outside. "They'll understand now," he said. "They'll understand what happens when you commit one crime against humans." But Tora shook her head. "No," she said softly. "Not yet. Not until the galaxy itself remembers what fear really means." Her eyes gleamed as she whispered, "And we've only just begun." That night, the galaxy trembled. Not because of the destruction, but because they all knew the humans weren't finished. The galaxy was no longer laughing. For millennia, the Valen's sovereignty had ruled with an iron fist. They thought no one could challenge them. But after the destruction of their fleet, after the humans shattered their pride in one night, the galaxy had changed forever. Everywhere you looked, there was fear. On merchant worlds, ships stayed docked. On slave colonies, overseers abandoned their posts. On council planets, leaders locked themselves in bunkers, and always out. In the distance, the black human ships waited, silent, watching, hunting, on the human flagship Eclipse. Commander Elena Torres stood before a massive star map. Dozens. Worlds glowed in red targets, and more were added every hour. Colonel Kane entered the room, his boots echoing against the cold metal floor. "The outer colonies are in chaos," he reported. "They're sending distress signals, begging for mercy." Torres didn't look up. "Good," she said quietly. "Let them beg." Kane raised an eyebrow. "Some of them aren't Valen. Some are just subjects, slaves, allies." At that, Torres finally turned. Her eyes were hard and cold. "They all watched. When they executed our people, they all cheered when they burned our colonies. None of them spoke for us. None of them stood for us." She pointed at the map. "Now they'll remember why that was a mistake." The first outer world to fall was Koresh, a wealthy trade hub. The Valens thought it would be safe, too far, too unimportant to matter, but at midnight the skies above Koresh split open as black human ships decloaked. Without a sound, they dropped strange black orbs into the city's streets. When the orbs opened, a thick mist spread, disabling every machine, silencing every defense system, and leaving the city defenseless. In the fog, black-armored humans appeared. Silent hunters moving from shadow to shadow. They didn't fire on civilians. They didn't destroy the city. They simply walked into the government palace, removed the Valen governor, and vanished, leaving behind a single message carved into the walls: "Justice comes." On Drathis, a military outpost deep in the Outer Rim, humans struck harder. A massive Valen garrison stood ready, thousands of troops, dozens of armored tanks, and fortified walls. Their commanders shouted orders, confident they could hold the humans here. But when the black ships came, the ground itself seemed to betray the Valens. Their weapons jammed, their tanks sank into sudden pits, their walls cracked and crumbled. The humans emerged from the dust, cutting through the Valen soldiers like shadows through light, and when it was over, the outpost burned, not because the humans destroyed it, but because the Valen set it on fire themselves, hoping to cover their shame. In the galaxy's heart, the High Chancellor watched these defeats unfold from his throne room. Ports came in one after another. Koresh, neutralized. Drathis, overrun. Valen supply fleets vanished en route to Calith, entire garrisons refusing to fight. The Chancellor's claws dug into the arms of his throne. "This is impossible," he hissed. "We have numbers. We have weapons."
How are
"They doing this?" One of his advisors, trembling, dared to speak. "Chancellor," it said, "they don't fight like we do. They don't conquer. They hunt." And hunt they did. On the desert moon Vilernine, a group of Valen nobles fled into underground bunkers, thinking they were safe. But when they arrived, the humans were already waiting inside. On the ocean world Tysa, the Valen navy hid beneath the waves. But at dawn, the sea turned black with human machines that rose from the depths and dismantled the ships piece by piece. On every world they touched, the humans left no doubt. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run, no one to save you. On board the Eclipse, Kane watched Torres as she stood at the viewport. Below them, yet another Valen world lay in flames. "It's working," Kane said quietly. "They're breaking. Entire colonies surrender without a fight now." Torres didn't smile. "Not enough," she replied.
Ow.
"They need to feel what we felt, helpless, alone, forgotten." Kane was silent for a long moment before asking, "How far are we going to take this?" Torres's eyes gleamed with something sharp and merciless. "As far as it takes for them to remember forever." Across the galaxy, panic took hold. Entire planets shut their gates, refusing to let anyone in or out. Valen civilians fled in droves, crashing ships into. The galaxy had already begun to crumble. World after world had fallen. The Valen fleets were in ruins, their armies scattered, their slaves freed, their citizens living in terror. But the humans still were not finished. For all the destruction, for all the fear they had sown, the humans had yet to reveal their true power, till now. On the Valen throne world, the High Chancellor sat in silence. The great golden hall, once full of bustling advisors and generals, now stood empty. Only the Chancellor remained, his once proud shoulders slumped, his claws trembling. All around him, giant screens displayed images of fallen colonies and burning ships. Newsfeeds shouted panic. Vilernine surrendered. Koresh governor captured. Tysa naval forces destroyed. The words blurred before his eyes. He couldn't escape the whispers. The galaxy was turning against him. People were losing faith. And above it all, the humans watched. On the walls of his chamber, someone had scratched a message during the night. When he noticed it, he froze. "We see you." Far above the galaxy's core in the blackness of space, the humans prepared their next move. On the flagship Eclipse, Commander Alina Torres stood before her officers. The star map was different this time, not just red and black lights marking targets now. A single point of deep white light pulsed at the center. Every officer in the room stared at it in silence. "It's ready," one finally said. Torres's eyes narrowed as she studied the white light. "And the containment?" "Stable," the officer replied, "for now. But once we release it," he didn't finish the thought. Torres finished it for him. "The galaxy will understand." She turned to Kane, who stood at her side. "It's time." Kane's lips curled into a grim smile. "Let's remind them what we're capable of." At dawn on the Valen capital world, the people looked up and saw something new. Above the clouds, a single black ship larger than anything they'd seen before, hovered silently. It blocked out the sun. Its surface shimmered with strange, white lines, glowing faintly, almost alive. The people on the ground stopped and stared. Even the Valen soldiers froze. One child tugged at her mother's sleeve and whispered, "Is that a star?" No one answered. On the eclipse Torres gave the order, "Release it." At her words, the center of the massive ship began to open. Petals of black metal folded outward, revealing a sphere of light small at first, but impossibly bright, contained in a cage of strange geometry. The galaxy watched. From every corner of space, cameras turned toward it. No one knew what it was. No one dared to speak until the humans spoke for them. On every screen, on every planet, the message appeared. You took our world from us. You erased our cities. You slaughtered our people. The light from the sphere grew brighter, humming with energy. Felt alive. For centuries we waited. We endured. We remembered. The white glow spread across the clouds, painting the sky silver. Now you will remember too. Above the capital, the sphere's cage opened completely. The light expanded, not fast, not loud, simply spread, silent and unstoppable. Every Valen ship in orbit disintegrated into dust the instant the light touched them. The great defense platforms melted into nothing. Even the golden statues that lined the city below crumbled into white ash. But the people were unharmed. They stood on the streets, frozen in terror and awe, as everything around them dissolved. In the High Chancellor's palace, the walls turned to dust before his eyes. He fell to his knees, clutching his head, whispering to himself, "What is it? What is it?" And then a voice answered him. "It is what you made us build." He spun around, but no one was there. The voice came from everywhere. "You turned our cities into graves. You burned our skies. You taught us pain. We learned from you. We learned how to take everything from you, without lifting a hand." The sphere's light finally touched the palace. The great golden throne melted into white mist. The Chancellor crawled backward, tears running down his face. "Please stop, please. We surrender." But there was no answer on the eclipse. Cain watched the destruction unfold. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with something deeper. "They're begging now," he said softly, "just like we did." Torres stood beside him, her arms crossed. "We won't kill them," she said. "We want them to live. We want them to wake up every day and see what they've lost. That is justice." Cain nodded, and the others winced at the map. "When this is over, we move to the next sector." When the light finally faded, the capital world was unrecognizable. The ships, the weapons, the fortresses, all gone. Only the people remained, standing in silence among the dust and in the sky above. The humans spoke one last time. "You committed one crime against humans, and now your galaxy is dust." The sphere of light retracted back into its cage, and the black ship slowly closed its petals, and the human fleet vanished, melting back into the darkness of space. Across the galaxy, the images spread like wildfire. Worlds surrendered without a fight. Allies turned against the Valens. Slaves rose up, emboldened by the humans' example. On distant planets, children began drawing the black ships in the dirt and whispering they're coming. They see everything. They never forget. On the eclipse, Torres looked at the star map one more time. Dozens of worlds had already turned black, but many more still glowed. Red Got Cain joined her, his hands behind his back. "The galaxy is broken," he said. "They'll never forget this." But Torres only shook her head. "Not yet," she replied. "Not until every star in their empire remembers what they did." Her eyes glinted as she whispered, "And we are very good at making them remember." The humans had revealed their ultimate weapon. And now the galaxy understood. This wasn't just a war. It was a reckoning. The galaxy was unrecognizable. The High Chancellor's world lay in ruins, stripped of its weapons, its fleets scattered like dust. The Valen sovereignty, once feared across the stars, now ruled nothing but fear itself. And still, the humans did not stop. They vanished after deploying their ultimate weapon, slipping back into the shadows. But their presence was everywhere. On every world, every screen still showed the same words, "We see you." And those words were enough to drive the galaxy mad. On the merchant planet Krillith, riots broke out as terrified citizens turned on their Valan governors, dragging them into the streets. "If the humans come, they'll blame you," someone shouted as crowds tore down the golden banners. On the icy mining colony, Forest 12, Valan soldiers locked themselves in their barracks, afraid even to step outside. The slaves they once commanded now stood over them, silent, waiting for the black ships to arrive. Even on the distant pleasure worlds, panic reigned. Luxurious towers burned as the wealthy fled into orbit, desperate to escape. But no one knew where to run, because no one knew where the humans would strike next. On board the Eclipse, star map glowed with dozens of worlds flashing red, and just as many turning black one by one. Colonel Kane studied the map in silence. "They're doing our work for us now," he said quietly. "We've barely had to fire a shot this week." Commander Torres stood beside him, her arms folded. "Fear is more powerful than any weapon," she replied. "We showed them what we're capable of. They destroy themselves trying to avoid it." A faint smirk touched her lips. "They still don't realize. We're not even finished yet." The neutral world of Zarthus. The leaders of surviving factions gathered in secret. The chamber was dark and full of whispers as alien. Dignitaries argued over how to stop the humans. "We should offer them tribute," a tall insectoid shouted. "We surrender now. Maybe they'll spare us." "No," barked a reptilian ambassador. "We should join them, hunt the Valans ourselves to earn their favor." But a third voice, small, trembling, asked what no one wanted to hear. What if? They don't want anything. What if this isn't about us at all? The chamber fell silent at that, because deep down, everyone suspected the same thing. The humans didn't want tribute. They didn't want alliances. They didn't even want revenge anymore. They wanted the galaxy to remember forever. In the shadows of the chamber, a tiny black drone hovered unnoticed, recording everything. Hours later on the Eclipse, Torres watched the footage with Kane. At her side. "They're fracturing," Kane said, watching the bickering aliens on the screen. "Turning on each other. They'll tear themselves apart before we even reach half of them." Torres nodded, but her expression remained cold. "Not enough," she whispered. "They need to feel it deeper, like we did, till there's nothing left to rebuild." She turned to her officers. "Prepare the next phase." The next phase came swiftly. The humans began reshaping the galaxy. On the agricultural world, Bressel, the humans landed silently in the fields. They didn't burn the crops or kill the workers. Instead, they dismantled the automated harvesters, handing the tools back to the farmers. For the first time in centuries, the Valan overseers were gone, and the workers were free to grow their own food. On the slave world Jarnes, black-armored humans marched into the massive labor camps. They didn't fire a single shot. They simply opened the gates, disabled the collars, and left, leaving behind only a single message etched into the walls: "No masters." And on the icy fortress of Drellic Prime, where thousands of Valan prisoners of war were once executed, the humans raised a black obelisk bearing only two words: "We remember." The galaxy began to change. Valan governors fled their posts, their soldiers abandoning them. Alliances crumbled. Slaves and workers formed. Coup! The galaxy had reached its breaking point. The Valan sovereignty was gone. Its fleets were ash, its armies scattered, its leaders hunted like animals. And yet, the humans still advanced. Across every world, whispers filled the air. "Maybe if we beg, they'll stop. Maybe if we kneel, they'll spare us." So at last, the galaxy begged. On the former capital of the Valans, now nothing but dust and ruins, a grand gathering took place. Delegates from every surviving species came together under the shattered golden dome. They stood where the High Chancellor once ruled, but now his throne was empty. Nothing left of him but a faint outline burned into the floor where the humans Light had touched. A massive table of black stone had been erected in the center of the hall, and one by one they placed their banners upon it, signs of surrender, submission, of desperation. The insectoid ambassador spoke first, his voice clicking nervously. We are ready to obey. We'll give you our fleets, our wealth, anything. Just stop. A reptilian general stepped forward next. We'll turn over the last of the Valens. Every commander, every soldier hiding in the outer systems, they're yours. Just let us live. Even the slave world representatives, finally free of their chains, spoke up. We don't want to fight you. We'll only wish to rebuild. All of them turned to face the humans' envoy. A single black armored figure standing silently at the head of the table. He said nothing. He didn't even sit. He simply listened as the galaxy begged for mercy. On the eclipse, Commander Torres and Colonel Kane watched the scene unfold through a live feed. Kane's arms were crossed, his expression cold. Do you believe them? Out, he asked quietly. Didn't answer at first. She stared at the trembling delegates on the screen, creatures that had once mocked humanity, enslaved them, executed them, and left their worlds in flames. Then she spoke, her voice low and sharp. They only understand. Fear. That's what they taught us. And now, that's what they'll live with forever. In the ruined dome, the delegates fell silent as the human envoy finally stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was deep and mechanical, echoing through the hall. The galaxy is yours. A stunned hush fell over the room. The delegates exchanged nervous glances, not sure they'd heard correctly. You may rebuild your worlds, the envoy continued. You may rule yourselves. You may decide your own fate. Relief swept through the crowd. Some delegates even wept, thinking it was over. But then the envoy's voice hardened. But you will remember. Every eye turned back to him. You will remember the chains you've placed upon us. The cities you burned, the families you slaughtered. He raised one black-gloved hand and pointed to the scorched throne behind him. You will remember what happens when you touch humanity. Walls of the chamber began to glow faintly. The same strange white lines that the human's ultimate weapon had left on so many worlds. And if you forget, the light grew brighter, he will remind you. With that, the envoy turned and walked away, leaving the galaxy's leaders standing in silence under the searing glow of the human's warning. That night, the galaxy changed. Forever, on every world, every screen displayed the same message. You are free. But you are watched. And across the stars, faint white lights began to appear in the void's strange rings. Towers and scaffolds left by the humans, silently orbiting planets and moons.
Out.
Some called them monuments. Others called them prisons. But everyone understood their true purpose. They were reminders. In the months that followed, the galaxy tried to rebuild. Slave worlds planted crops in free soil. Merchants reopened their trade routes, though they dared not charge unfair prices. Armies disbanded, knowing that any act of aggression would draw the humans' gaze. On one world, a group of new rulers debated whether they could secretly start rebuilding their fleets. When they looked up that night, they saw a black ship, hovering silently above their capital, and their plans died before they began. On another world, a Valen warlord tried to rally his soldiers for revenge. But when dawn came, he and his army had vanished, leaving only white ash blowing across the plains. The galaxy learned quickly, and it never forgot again. On the eclipse, Kane stood at the viewport, watching one of the strange white rings glow faintly over a distant planet. Do you think they'll behave? He asked. Torres joined him, her arms crossed. They don't have a choice anymore, she said. They'll pretend at first. Then they'll start to believe it. Then they'll teach their children to fear us, and their children's children. Kane smirked faintly. A galaxy raised on fear. Torres shook her head. Not fear, she corrected. Memory. And outside the stars gleamed. But now they belonged to someone else. In the darkness between stars, a final message from the humans echoed through the void. We will not rule you, will not save you, we will not forgive you, but you will remember. The galaxy heard. and it obeyed. On the black ship's bridge, Torres closed her eyes, listening to the quiet hum of power. Beneath her feet, Kane spoke softly, almost to himself. "We were weak once," he said. "We were broken." Torres opened her eyes and answered, "Not anymore." Above them, the human's ultimate weapon, the sphere of white light, rested inside its cage, pulsing, faintly like a heartbeat, and in its quiet glow, the galaxy trembled. The final verdict had been delivered. The galaxy would live, but it would never again be free from the memory of what it had done to humanity. The galaxy was quiet now. For the first time in millennia, the wars had stopped. The screams of the enslaved were gone. Thunder of fleets clashing in the void had faded into silence. The Valan sovereignty, once the heart of cruelty, arrogance, and power, no longer existed. Its banners lay in dust. Its golden cities were ash. Its name was spoken only in shame, and the humans were gone. On the throne world where the black stone table still stood, the galaxy's new leaders gathered again, but this time in silence, afraid even to raise their voices too high. The insectoid ambassador studied the faint white glow still etched into the walls. "It's been 6 months," he whispered. "Do you think they're watching?" Across from him, the reptilian general let out a nervous hiss. "Of course they are. Don't you see the lights? Look outside." The delegates turned toward the shattered dome and looked up. In the black sky above, faint white rings still hung in orbit, silent, unmoving, impossible to understand. Every night they glowed a little brighter. Every morning they dimmed again. Some said the rings were weapons. Some believed they were eyes. Others thought they were warnings. But no one dared to touch them. On the merchant planet Krillith, life had resumed. Markets bustled again, but quieter now. No shouting, no cheating. Traders worked hard, never looking up too long at the black ship that sometimes appeared in the clouds. On the desert moon Velar 9, the newly freed slaves built monuments of their own, tall black pillars inscribed with the names of every human. Colony destroyed by the Valans centuries before. Children were taught to pray there at dawn, not for protection, but for memory. On Tysa, the ocean world, the seas were calm again. But at the deepest trenches, strange black machines rested silently, just visible when the water was clear, as though waiting for a reason to rise again. And still, no one saw the humans. On board the Eclipse, hidden deep in the void, Commander Elena Torres walked to the empty halls. Her boots echoed faintly as she passed through the command deck. Past officers quietly monitoring the galaxy's transmissions. Colonel Kane stood at the viewport, staring at a cluster of distant stars. "They're behaving," he said quietly when he heard her approach. "No more uprisings, no more executions. They've learned." Torres stopped beside him and followed his gaze. "They haven't learned," she replied. "They've remembered." "Better." She glanced at the star map. Almost every world glowed black now. Only a handful of faint red points still flickered here and there, remnants of resistance. "And when those red lights are gone," Kane asked, "what then?" Torres was silent for a long time before answering. "Then we disappear." And so they did. One by one, the black ships withdrew. On each world, when the sun rose, the watchers were gone. The faint white ring still hung in the sky, but the humans no longer appeared. No messages came, no judgments. Only silence. At first, the galaxy dared not believe it. On some planets, crowds waited in the streets at night, staring upward, certain the black ships would return. On others, soldiers still patrolled, scanning for any hint of human presence. But nothing happened. Days turned to weeks. Weeks turned to months, and still nothing. The humans had vanished, but their memory never did. On the slave world Jarnies, freed children sang an old human song as they worked the fields, though. No one remembered where they had learned it. On the icy mining station Forest 12, workers left offerings of food and water on the highest cliffs, just in case the humans came back. On distant neutral planets, old leaders spoke in whispers of the day the humans had burned the stars white, and warned their heirs never to make the same mistake. and in the deep void, where no sun shone, scavengers sometimes stumbled across something stranger still. Massive black structures, some as big as moons, drifted silently between the stars. Some glowed faintly, others pulsed like hearts. All of them bore the same words etched in white: "We remember." One scavenger ship, daring to approach one of these monuments, claimed to have heard a faint voice through the static. A single, quiet warning: "We're still here."